We've got secrets today. Stay tuned to find out what the drug companies won't tell you and your doctor doesn't know. My name is Yvonne Lewis, and you're watching Urban Report. Hello, and welcome to Urban Report. Did you know that approximately 70% of patients with chronic daily headaches suffer from drug-induced headaches? Well, this fact and many others are featured in the book written by today's guest entitled, What the Drug Companies Won't Tell You and Your Doctor Doesn't Know. I am so excited about today's guest. He's the country's most well-known naturopathic doctor, having authored more than 30 books on natural medicine. His research into the health benefits of proper nutrition is the foundation for a best-selling line of vitamins and supplements at Natural Factors, where he's Director of Product Development. He's a graduate, faculty member, and serves on the Board of Regents of Bastyr University in Seattle, Washington. It is my honor to introduce my ND hero, Dr. Michael Murray. Welcome to Urban Report, Dr. Murray. Yay!
Well, I'm excited to be with you, Yvonne.
It's so great to have you.
Likewise.
I have so many questions. Your book, this book, What the Drug Companies Won't Tell You and Your Doctor Doesn't Know, is so full, chock full of such valuable information. What made you write this book? What compelled you to write it?
Well, I think we live in a society where people are looking for the quick fix, and we've all been manipulated by the propaganda and marketing of the drug industry. And in this day and age, we're trying to treat many health conditions that owe their origin to diet, lifestyle, and our attitude with drugs. And these biochemical band-aids, in many cases, end up causing more harm than good. And people need to know that there are safe and effective natural ways to address many of these common illnesses.
Absolutely. And just at the outset, so that people don't misunderstand, because we have a lot of physicians who watch this program as well. We are not bashing physicians. This is not that kind of program, but what it is an acknowledgement of the use of natural means to acquire health. I mean, that is just, it's such an important factor that we can use natural things to induce health. What do you feel is the most important thing that the drug companies won't tell us?
Well, first of all, yeah, I want to echo your point. We've all had our lives touched in nearly miraculous ways by advances in medicine, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the wash. What I'm really speaking against is the irrational use of drugs and the use of drugs first instead of utilizing these safer and, in many cases, more effective natural approaches. To answer your specific question, the number one thing the drug companies don't want us to realize is that indwelling within each of us is a tremendous capacity to heal and to be healthy. And if we give our body and our minds the right sort of support, we can achieve tremendous health benefits.
Absolutely. We believe that the way the body was created, it was created to heal itself. So when you cut yourself, you immediately go into healing mode. The body goes into healing mode because it was created to do just that. So that's what natural medicine is really about. And I like in your book the way you talk about rational medicine. Explain that for us, if you would, the rational approach to medicine.
Well, some of the drugs are completely irrational. For example, if we look at the drugs that are used in the treatment of osteoarthritis, the major form of arthritis in America, this condition is characterized by a wearing down of the cartilage. And as we age, many of us lose the ability to manufacture sufficient levels of cartilage components. The drugs reduce the activity of enzymes that produce painful and inflammatory compounds. What people don't realize is that these same drugs also impair the body's ability to manufacture cartilage components. So use of these drugs is a classic example of suppressing the symptoms but actually promoting the progression of the disease process. So it's totally irrational to use those drugs. Instead, we should be utilizing techniques and therapies that are designed to give the body the necessary building blocks to build strong, healthy cartilage. That's what makes sense. And the more we learn about ourselves, the more we learn about nature, the more we learn about our physiology and nutrition, the more we realize how many things have been provided for us to achieve health and maintain our health.
See, this is just so, you're just singing my song here, because if we give, again, if we provide the body with the building blocks that it needs, it's equipped to heal itself. And that the whole idea of these drugs actually changing various pathways and cutting off different things, they're not often working with the body, they work against the body. And that's one of the issues that I have with a lot of the drug use that's going on. What are some of the drugs that are, again, working, some other examples of drugs working against the body in healing?
Well, the way we're trying to address this epidemic of type 2 diabetes is really kind of silly. Most often when someone is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, they're immediately placed on these oral hypoglycemic drugs. Now, they may need that drug for a short term to act as a crutch until the lifestyle and dietary measures kick in, but most of the time they're not given proper advice on diet, lifestyle, and proper supplementation. So they end up becoming over-reliant on these drugs. And what we know about these drugs that are used to lower blood sugar levels in type 2 diabetes is that they don't alter the progression of the disease, and eventually they stop working. So the doctor has to prescribe them either in higher dosages or in combination with other drugs. And when that happens, it actually increases mortality. The reason why we want to treat type 2 diabetes is that it carries with it an increased risk of having a heart attack, having a stroke, or developing cancer. But when we look at the data, when we rely on those drugs, they actually end up putting people into the grave sooner. So the reason is because we're not addressing the underlying cause. Good medicine is always about addressing that underlying factor. And we can't ignore the power of our mind, the power of our beliefs, the power of our diet, and the power of our lifestyle in influencing our health. And that's what I'm against ignoring. And that's what conventional medicine doesn't pay enough attention to, because there's no profit in it for the drug companies. If everybody was healthy, they'd be out of business.
Well, that is so true. You know, I've noticed when I go to some dinners and things, and I see people that I know have type 2 diabetes, and they'll eat anything they want to eat, and then they'll think that if they pop a pill, that's going to change the situation. And what you're saying, Dr. Murray, is so true, that if we can get to the cause of the issue, meaning lifestyle changes and that kind of thing, we make poor lifestyle choices and then think that that there's a magic pill for it, that a pill is going to actually change the situation. It might kind of ameliorate the symptoms, but it is not going to address the root cause. And that's one of the things that naturopathic medicine does. It identifies the root cause of the condition, and then you attempt to make changes. What would you say if you're looking at the situation as a whole with the interaction between the drug companies and the doctors? How would you describe that whole relationship, that interdependence?
We have a faulty system. We have a situation where the drug companies are spending most of their money on, they call it continuing medical education, but it's basically trying to sell their drugs to physicians. And they also advertise now on TV, on the radio, and in print whereas prior to 1997, that was illegal. Direct-to-consumer advertising is a big problem. If I was health czar for a day, that's one of the first things that I would do, is eliminate direct-to-consumer advertising. The second thing I would do is I would make research transparent. It's a sad fact that the majority of research on drugs in the United States is conducted by clinical research organizations. These are companies that the drug companies actually pay to do the research. Since the drug companies paid for the research, they own it. So then they're free to manipulate the information, they're free to cover it up. They own that information, and they have complete rights to dispense it any way they want. So a lot of times what's happening is that after the fact, we find out, because these drugs have caused some problems, that the drug companies knew from the very get-go that there were problems with their drugs. A case in point are the drugs like Celebrex, Vioxx, and Bextra that were developed for osteoarthritis. These drugs killed more Americans than we lost in the Vietnam War. These drugs killed over 60,000 Americans. The initial research just looked fabulous, but who did that research? Well, the drug companies did that research. And they knew from the very beginning that there were problems with these drugs on the heart. I mentioned the type 2 diabetes medications, Avandia. Avandia was a drug that came to market with much ballyhoo. Again, the initial research just looked fabulous. But who did that research? The drug companies. Who paid for that research? The drug companies. Was it complete? No. And they started doing independent studies where they would take people with type 2 diabetes, divide them into two groups, give one group a placebo and the other group the Avandia. The group taking the Avandia had a 64% increase in fatal heart attacks. The U.S. Senate did a report, and they estimated that 83,000 heart attacks were caused by this type 2 diabetes medication. Now we have data showing that sleeping pills are one of the biggest contributors to premature death in America. 10% of our population regularly take these benzodiazepine and other types of sedative hypnotic drugs. And studies all around the globe, there have been now 19 very detailed studies that have evaluated the link between taking these sleeping pills and them causing an early death. The latest, it's just unbelievable. And we know that insomnia is a huge problem. It's a huge problem. Number one, I have a couple of questions about it, because you've raised a couple of questions. So first of all, with insomnia, what would be a naturopathic approach to helping someone get better sleep? Yeah, well, I've just recently moved to Arizona. Prior to that, I was in the Seattle area and in the Northwest for many years. And in Seattle, I cured many people of their uncurable insomnia just by having them cut down on their caffeine intake. Some people are very sensitive to caffeine. There are two types of insomnia. There's sleep onset insomnia, where people have a hard time calming down and getting to sleep. But the more common form of insomnia is called sleep maintenance insomnia. This is the form where people are able to get to sleep, but they wake up 3, 4, 5 or more hours after going to bed and can't get back to sleep. Well, we've been monitoring people's blood sugar levels continuously using some new technology, and what we found is that when people are on what we call the blood sugar roller coaster, when their blood sugar levels are going up and down during the day, they also experience that at night as well. So anytime there's a rapid drop in our blood sugar levels, there's a release of adrenaline and cortisol. That wakes us up and get back to sleep. So for many people, the best approach to getting a better night's sleep is to focus on their diet and proper supplementation to control their blood sugar levels. If they stabilize their blood sugar levels throughout the day, it'll help stabilize blood sugar levels throughout the night, and they'll be able to sleep continuously.
So who would, see, this is so deep, who would have connected blood sugar levels with insomnia? I mean, like the average person is not going to think, well, my blood sugar levels are up and down, so I can't sleep at night. Yeah. Who would have done that? And yet that is the link. That is a link. Blood sugar levels.
Yeah, so, if we're taking a biochemical Band-Aid to try to help us sleep through the night, and that drug doesn't address the underlying cause, in this case, if someone had a blood sugar issue and they took a sleeping pill, the sleeping pill is not going to impact that at all. It's going to help put them out. But you know what happens when we take that sleeping pill? It actually ends up disrupting normal sleep processes. Now, sleep is still largely a mystery, but I think everyone would agree that we need sleep, and
Right.
that sleep is responsible for recharging us, for healing us, for regeneration. It's very critical. So if we're interfering with our sleep processes, it's little wonder that these sleeping pills are associated with a 35% increase in developing cancer. So we got to look deeper. We can't look to try to address our health concerns first by taking a drug. We have to look at what we can do with our diet, our lifestyle, and attitude. I'm a broken record, but hopefully it's one that will resonate with your listeners.
Well, we as Adventist Christians, we are very health focused, and so you are actually singing our song. We know that if we don't change lifestyle, make changes in the lifestyle, then what do you have? You lead to disease if you don't get enough rest, if you don't eat properly. All of these things will cause disease. And I think that we live in a society that's so quick to push a pill, and yet lifestyle change is not that easy. Another thing that you talk about in the book that I'd like to address is GERD and acid indigestion. How does modern medicine approach that, allopathic medicine approach that, and then what is the difference with functional medicine?
Okay. Yeah, gastroesophageal reflux disorder is characterized by heartburn. In the past, we would call it indigestion, but now they've got a fancier name for it. And it's treated now with some pretty heavy-duty drugs. And what these drugs do is they block the production of acid. Now, many people that have gastroesophageal reflux or have heartburn have poor digestion and would actually benefit by taking hydrochloric acid. When you take the drug to block the symptoms, you're also blocking the digestive process. So you're end up creating more problems than you're really benefiting. And these drugs are linked to an increased risk for fractures. They're linked to nutrient deficiencies, and they're linked to altering our gut microflora. We have more microbes growing in our intestinal tract than we have cells in our human body. So,
wow.
Yeah, so there's more bacterial cells in our gut than there are human cells in our body. And the type of bacteria that we have in our intestinal cells play a huge role in our overall health. So it's little wonder that when we disrupt that flora, we disrupt our health. So I think there's better approaches. If someone has indigestion, I think most often they're going to respond better to digestive support. And that may mean hydrochloric acid supplementation. It may mean digestive enzymes. It may mean taking some of these probiotics to replenish our gut flora. So it takes a little bit of detective work, but I think in the long run, the person is better off utilizing a more rational approach than just simply blocking their symptoms.
I'd like to ask you something else with that too, Dr. Mike, because to the average person, if they're taking an antacid, they think that they have too much HCl, too much hydrochloric acid. But what you're saying is they actually need more. Is that what you're saying? They actually need more acid to properly digest their food. That seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does. But about 80 to 90% of people who have GERD have low to normal hydrochloric acid production. So only about 10% really are secreting too much acid. There are a lot of factors to take into consideration with gastroesophageal reflux disorder. Certain foods tend to aggravate it. Again, I'll pick on coffee. It's one of the big culprits in GERD. Overeating, those two things alone are some of the biggest contributors to gastroesophageal reflux disorder.
Wow. Well, in the African American community, there is a very high level, there's a high level of chronic disease such as hypertension, diabetes, cancer, and with hypertension, for example, what are some of the suggestions that you would have to naturally control high blood pressure?
You know, you brought up an audience that I would love to be able to touch, because it's very sad for me to see this epidemic of high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, many forms of cancer in our African American community. I don't think they have enough heroes. They need they need people out there inspiring. Hopefully you're doing that. But I've heard that it's hard for them to make changes to their diet and lifestyle, but it really begins with diet. Certain racial groups, they have a genetic predisposition for Western diseases, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, obesity. When we look at the Polynesians, when we look at the African Americans, when we look at the Pima Indians, eating the typical American diet is like poison to them. So fried foods are a no. Salt, too much salt is a no. Most African Americans with high blood pressure are very salt sensitive. So simply utilizing a potassium chloride form of salt versus a sodium chloride form, sometimes that's enough to help bring that blood pressure down. But the biggest contributor to high blood pressure in America, regardless of race or age or sex, is being overweight. So that's where we really have to focus. We have to help people achieve and maintain their ideal body weight.
Great, thank you. Now, what about diabetes? I know that recently you wrote a book, you authored a book about a natural approach to diabetes. Again, that is another condition that plagues African Americans, Latinos, lots of folks in the inner cities. What would you say about diabetes? And actually, I know that you've written a book about it, so there's a lot that you could say. But how would you, if you were talking to someone right now that had diabetes, type 2 diabetes, what would you say as being some of the most important factors involved in that?
Diabetes is a killer. When you have diabetes, it not only shortens your life, it significantly impairs your quality of life. That's well known. When you're diabetic, especially if you're poorly controlled, it impacts every aspect of your life. You don't sleep well, you don't have energy, you have aches and pains. The quality of your life depends upon maintaining your blood sugar levels within a very narrow range. Diabetes is a condition most often of diet and lifestyle. And you have to make changes in those areas. You may need to take a medication, but that is like using a crutch or putting your arm in a sling. If you hurt it, if you keep it in that sling or you keep using those crutches, you lose that function. And that's what happens when we rely on these drugs. There's no way around it. If you have type 2 diabetes, you have to make changes to your diet and lifestyle. And if you can, then you can actually cure and reverse your type 2 diabetes. That's not stressed enough.
Yes, yes, that is so true. It's not stressed enough that it can be cured. That word cure, Dr. Murray, how often do you hear that word just in general, cure or heal? How often do you hear it? And yet diabetes can be reversed. It's one of the easiest things to reverse if the lifestyle changes are made.
Absolutely.
Now, how can you prevent stroke and heart attack? See, I'm asking you all these questions, and this is the Reader's Digest approach.
And again, we're going to try and point people in the right direction.
Yes.
The book is a good resource. My website's a great resource. But a lot of it is just common sense, and a lot of it we know what we need to do. In regards to heart disease and strokes, there's been an over-focus on lowering cholesterol. About 50% of people who have a fatal heart attack have normal to low cholesterol levels. So it's just a piece of the puzzle. And, you know, I don't know the right way to say it, but something that really gets me going is when we rely solely on trying to reduce one thing and thinking that we have protection, and we ignore all the other risk factors. High cholesterol levels are a risk factor, but so is lack of exercise, so is high blood pressure, so is diabetes, so is being overweight, and so is smoking. Those are the major risk factors, and we have other risk factors as well. Diets that are low in antioxidants, so not getting enough fruits and vegetables and legumes in the diet, you know, not taking enough antioxidant supplements. Fish oils have also been shown to be protective. These other areas are often neglected, and that's a shame, because when we look at the data with fish oils, for example, it far exceeds the significance of statin drugs in reducing the risk for having a heart attack or stroke. Studies have shown that when people are able to take about 1,000 milligrams of the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids found in fish oils, if they can get that level every day, 1,000 milligrams of the omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, they can reduce their risk of having a heart attack or stroke by nearly 60%.
Wow. Wow.
That's actually more significant than exercise, but I don't like telling people that because I'm afraid they're not going to exercise.
Because they'll stop exercising. Dr. Murray, where did our time go? Our time is up. I want to put your website up on the screen so people can check it out. They can order the books. They can see drmurray.com. That is his website. Dr. Murray, thank you so much for being with us.
I want to be there live. We have to set that up.
Oh,
I want to be there live so I can give you a big old hug.
Oh, I would love that. Okay, now, viewers, you heard that. You heard Dr. Murray. Now it's etched in stone. He's going to come, and he's going to come and visit. Thank you so much, Dr. Murray.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
One of my favorite authors, Ellen White, talks about the effects on the body of the injudicious use of drugs. In the book Spiritual Gifts, she states, "I was shown that more deaths have been caused by drug taking than from all other causes combined. Multitudes of drugs have cursed the inhabitants of the earth and have carried thousands and tens of thousands to untimely graves." And in Ministry of Healing, she states that the true physician is an educator. He recognizes his responsibility not only to the sick who are under his direct care, but also to the community in which he lives. Oh, it's so important that we realize that we can change from these poor lifestyle habits and choices to making healthy choices. We can make healthy choices, we can change our lifestyles, and we can actually have health. If we seek Jesus Christ, we can have health. Thanks so much for being with us. See you next time. It wouldn't be the same without you.